Forget everything you think you know about the Titanic. Forget the movies, the museums, and the history books. Because deep inside the rotting carcass of the world's most famous ship, hidden behind a wall of steel that hasn't seen light in 112 years, something has just been found that changes the entire story. We were told the wreck had been picked clean. We were told the dead were gone, dissolved by the ocean and time. We were lied to. 12,500 feet down, the pressure is strong enough to crush a car into the size of a soda can. It is a place of absolute suffocating darkness. But last week, a rogue deep-sea scanning mission detected an anomaly that shouldn't exist. It wasn't on the blueprints. It wasn't on the sonar maps from the 1980s. It was a phantom. Void, a sealed chamber tucked behind the reinforced steel of the mailroom, buried under tons of twisted iron. The pilots of the submersible hesitated. To breach that wall was to risk their own lives, but the curiosity was a sickness they couldn't shake. Slowly, the robotic arm of the sub extended, pushing against a rusted plate that had held its breath since 1912. With a groan that vibrated through the water, the metal gave way. A plume of black silt exploded outward, like smoke from a cannon. And when the dust settled, the high-powered floodlights cut through the gloom to reveal a sight that made the blood in their veins turn to ice. The room was perfectly preserved, a vacuum of time. The water inside had been stagnant, devoid of oxygen, preventing decay. And there, sitting in the corner, were not shadows, but shapes, white porcelain shapes, skeletons, 3 of them. They weren't scattered or broken. They were huddled together, still draped in the tatters of heavy wool coats and leather boots that defied the chemistry of the ocean. One figure had its arm around the other, a frozen tableau of terror and comfort in their final seconds. It was a sight that shouldn't be possible. Bones usually dissolve at this depth, but this room was a tomb, sealed tight against the ravages of the sea. But as the camera panned down, the horror transformed into confusion, and then into blinding shock. Something was reflecting the light. It wasn't the dull rust of the ship. It was a sharp, brilliant sparkle. The drone moved closer, its motors humming in the silence. Lying beneath the skeletal hands, half buried in the silt, were crates. Iron strongboxes that had burst open under the crushing pressure, spilling out. Of them was not debris, but a river of fire, gold, bars of solid bullion stamped with the insignias of defunct banks, stacked like bricks. And amidst the gold lay a galaxy of gemstones, diamonds as big as knuckles, rubies deeply red like fresh blood, and emeralds that glowed with an alien green fire. This was no ordinary luggage. This was a king's ransom, a secret transfer of assets by terrified aristocrats fleeing the banking panics of the early 20th century. A hoard never listed on any manifest. The contrast was sickening. Here lay the fragile remains of the doomed, resting atop a fortune that could have bought the entire White Star Line 10 times over. A skeletal hand rested casually on a pile of gold coins, a haunting, poetic reminder that when the freezing water rises, $1 million can't buy you another breath of air. For minutes, the crew in the control room couldn't speak. The greed that usually hunts for treasure was replaced by a heavy, crushing sadness. This wasn't a bank vault. It was a desperate shelter. These 3 souls had locked themselves in with the most valuable things on Earth, hoping to ride out the disaster, only to realize too late that they had built their own coffin dot as the submersible began its ascent, leaving the tomb undisturbed. The coordinates were wiped from the navigation log. The captain decided some secrets belonged to the abyss. The gold remains there right now, glowing in the eternal dark, guarded by the silent watchers who learned the hardest lesson of all. You cannot bribe the ocean, and you cannot buy your way out of fate.